Hello, everyone, and good morning. If you are watching this, it is most likely Tuesday. What are we at? March 29th, week 11. So this is a slide a little bit on facility design, sustainable things that we need to start talking about. So this will be the final amount of material that will be tested upon in week 12. So right now it's week 11. This is going to be also there will be a bonus assignment that I will speak about at the end of this PowerPoint. So when it comes to resource conservation, it's something that we really need to start working in. Just so you know, this is week 11, and a lot of sustainable different ideas have a cost to them, right? So there's it might cost a lot more money up front for a long-term savings in the long run. So a couple things that we'll look at today is some resource stats, look at some different sustainable design concepts, and some food service construction costs that may be aligned with making these sustainable changes. So did you know between 209 to 253 pounds of food that is wasted per year from each consumer in North America? So for each person that lives here in North America, we waste more food than we weigh ourselves. 2 months is the amount of time we could feed another human with the food waste from one consumer. It's 1.3 billion tons amount of food wasted globally. 50% of the fish and seafood that was once caught is wasted. 70% of freshwater use in North America goes to agricultural production, and 17% of meals are left uneaten at restaurants, hotels, schools, and hospitals. So needless to say, it is very easy for us to confirm that we have a waste issue, 100%. We are not sustainable. Many of you come from another country where that waste is probably not nearly as high. Here in Canada and in North America, we are very wasteful with the amounts of water and food that we don't use, and we need to be a little bit better at this. Another thing, gas emissions. So this is greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram of food product. You may have seen some really fantastic documentaries that are out there. You've seen the effect that meat and meat-based products have on the environment. And as you can see right here, beef, lamb, dairy, and prawns are the highest contributor per kilogram of food product, essentially saying that while a vegetarian meal or vegetarian diet isn't the best way necessarily for all people, but a mainly vegetarian diet is good for the economy, it's good for the planet, and it's generally good for the patient. Commercially, a little bit more difficult. How the environment impacts our food. So when you look at this, where 26% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from food and food growing or food manufacturing, 74% of global emissions come from other. When it comes to land use, we use about 50% of the global habitable land for farming. And the rest, forests, urban areas, shrubs, and freshwater, is other habitable land. And this is only going to be increased. And then 70% of the global fresh water is used for agriculture, and then 19% in industry and 11% in households. So it's also a question that we need to start having with ourselves is, are we worried as much about turning the tap off when we're brushing our teeth? Whereas in how agriculture manages their resources and their waste at a higher level. So we have to ask ourselves the question, who do we support when we purchase our products? Are we purchasing from local? So the more you buy local, the less delivery time, the lower the impact on the actual land is. When you buy internationally, then you're looking at buying lettuce that's been cut and cultivated for 3 weeks, sitting on a shipping container, and for some reason is still green. Lots of runoff, lots of chemicals, lots of pesticides. We can do better, and it starts in small little steps. Another one here, just a little bit more information as far as global greenhouse gas emissions from food production. And you're looking at about 18% comes from the supply chain. So this is moving food around. 31% of that greenhouse gas comes from livestock and fish farms. crop production, and then land use for human food as well. So it just gives you an idea of where this 26% is broken up into. There's another one here, again, about greenhouse gas emissions across the food supply chain. So again, it breaks down all of those different food items that we were looking at. And if you look down here, some of the impact of soy milk and bananas and root vegetables and citrus fruit and nuts, all of this stuff, some of it's even good for the environment. Whereas most of this stuff has a mild amount, and we can essentially live off the majority of this stuff here. We don't need pigs and beef and dairy and lamb and mutton and stuff like that. So what is sustainability? So it's 3 different levels of sustainability, or 3 different branches. And that's important to understand, because everyone thinks it's just environmental, and it really has, I'm not going to say it doesn't have much to do with the environment. That's a huge part of it. But there's also an economic sustainability and a social sustainability. So development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability for future generations to meet their own needs. The number one problem with our particular world is overpopulation. Everyone will say that. I plan on having a boatload of kids, as many as I can, and then that's just something that's what I want to do. But a lot of people have that similar thought. That's nature. We are driven to propagate and make more of us. That is what we were built to do, essentially. But unfortunately, wildlife has a way of having a carrying capacity, which means a certain plot of land, if it can handle 100 deer, you'll see over history, it might go up to 120, it might go down to 80, there might be some famine, disease, but nature has a way of balancing itself out, whereas in humans do not. Technology mainly has been the reason that we have been able to consistently increase the population, but at the same time, environmentally, we are running out of room, we're running out of resources, and we can't live the same way that we've been living. So the first one, environmental sustainability, is the ecological integrity of all of Earth's environmental systems that are kept in balance while natural resources within them are consumed by humans at a rate where they're able to replenish themselves. So I don't really get mad when I see logging, because I know that the majority of logging in North America, you must replant forests where you have taken them out. And some people do selective logging. Mining and other resources like that are a little bit more difficult. So if we can operate more on a wind geothermal basis for a lot of our power, nuclear even versus coal or oil, that would be ideal. There's a lot of new ways coming out. One of the big problems as well as environmental sustainability is also diversity. So it's not the fact that we don't have animal life, it's that we don't have many kinds of animal life. I recommend that you watch, it's about an hour and a half documentary called The Biggest Little Farm. And it really goes into the details and the specifics of good environmental sustainability is not having this lovely meadow with 100 horses that are in them. No, but instead it's a grassland that have horses and pigs and deers and wolves and coyotes and cougars and bugs and bees and all the other little bits and bytes that are out there in nature, because combined they sustain the land and they need to feed off each other, and a hunter-prey mentality needs to exist, as opposed to, having huge farm yards full of, cattle. It's just one cattle, and you shoot the coyotes and the wolves that come around, and the land is just so full of carbon from all of their poos that it's just uninhabitable almost. There's a difference. Economic sustainability is that we have a financial system around the world. We have currencies. It is not, we don't trade anymore. Here's some eggs for a chicken and a lamb or whatever it might be. We have a financial system. And if we do not have money in which to provide to our employers and employees, then they will suffer and they won't be able to live and they won't be able to contribute. So economic systems must be intact. The activities are available to everyone, such as a secure source of livelihood, being able to live. So if those aren't met, then nothing else can be accomplished. No business can survive. No families can survive. And then there's other one is social sustainability, which is a little bit different because everyone has a universal human right and basic necessity. We need to be able to be heard. We need to be able to have some sort of government. We need to be able to feel secure. We need communities that are healthy and secure. There are many communities, and you don't need to go to some places in the world that seem that they're on hard times. You can go into any town around us and see communities that are not healthy and people that have no access to resources that they should have, or no access to mental health help, or addiction help, or things like that. So healthy communities have just leaders who ensure personal, labor, and cultural rights are respected, and all people are protected from discrimination. I would say the number one concern or issue that we're dealing with is not the fact that humans are unable to do things or unable to do things. We don't have the inability to do these. It's the fact that humans have too much greed and jealousy in their heart. And that's ultimately it. So it's I know this is getting deeper than maybe this PowerPoint intended, but the greed and jealousy, and social media just amplifies this through the roof, is where really all of these start to crumble. TD Bank posted $8.2 billion profit over a 3-month term. Who needs $8.2 billion when you're paying your tellers minimum wage? Why don't you pay your people better? So it's one of those things where we have now, instead of countries that are ruining the world, we have mega corporations that are ruining the world, because all they're doing is trying to take more and more and more. You see the wealth gap go like this. There's very many people at the very bottom who are barely surviving, and there's a slim margin up here who have all the money, and it's just not right, and it's causing the foundations of what this world is to crumble a bit. So sustainability is the idea that human society should operate by utilizing these 3 economic, social, industrial, and biological processes to be sustained indefinitely. Processes should be cyclical rather than linear oriented. So they be in a cycle, in a year-round cycle, especially when we look at our food. So our menus should match our food growth cycles. So in November and December, what you are offering is food that you just harvested. So it's usually root vegetables, because that's when they and corns and things like that, because that's when they come. But you can do early spring ones. A lot of the meals from January to March will have to be stuff that you have preserved or frozen or jarred or things like that, and able to get through this cycle. And our menus should not reflect necessarily only what people would like to eat, but what is good for the world to eat, or what is good for our local region to eat. Waste should not exist. Instead, the output of one process is the food for the next process, within reason. There's going to be always a little bit of waste, and a lot of it can do with potentially stopping some sort of diseases. The amounts of food that you waste during this processing, so removal of shells and husks and seeds and things like that. That's not so bad. But it's full meals that are completely untouched. And it's very difficult, especially in a health unit where people might not have an appetite. So how do we reduce waste? It's a big question. And each individual location will have probably a solution that would vary. So when we think about facility design and we think about sustainability and how we work this in, a lot of it is we can control up into the point where it goes into the consumer's mouth. So the ordering, the production systems, the par levels that we set, cooking to order, the preserving or the potential to preserve. So when you order in frozen stuff and thaw it, you can't freeze it again. But if you order in fresh and have a good cycle of deliveries, prepare it, you have the ability to freeze some of those meals. Right? And even if you're just feeding your staff with it, or you're feeding the homeless, that's fine as well, but it's not being wasted. A green design. So when we think about, we can create processes that are sustainable, but we can also create facilities that are sustainable, or as much as possible. So when you think about sustainable, this principle should minimize the use of non-renewable resources and seek to prevent air, water, and ground contamination. We have a standard of green design known as LEED, L-E-E-D, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. You get awards for this. The Canada Green Building Council is the grantor of the LEED certification here in Canada. In the United States, it's something different, but they both have this LEED certification, which we will discuss here in class. And it's all about being a leader in how we not only use our energy, but also how we design our property within our environment. So here are some LEED examples, which you may not know. This is the Vancouver Convention Center. So this is the LEED V4. So this is the top platinum certification that you can attain. So as you can just see from the pictures right here, it's a massive, massive area. It did not, just because it's sustainable, everyone thinks like living off grid. Like I'm having a composting toilet and I'm living in the woods and I'm eating bark off the tree. That's not necessarily it. This is a fabulous, modern looking place. It has its own water treatment facility. It has green roofs, as you can see, which help with air conditioning as well as heating. It insulates in the winter, winter and summer, so it keeps the cold air in or keeps the hot air out. It uses efficient fixtures and treatment facility to save 38% of previous water use. So it's almost 2 million liters of water that it uses as that would have been just waste. It has a waste diversion rate of over 75%. There's a reclaim room where all the leftover materials are good from events go to source local charities, schools, churches. And the energy is complete conversion to baluster lighting, from baluster lighting, which is what was in the college and just horrible, to LED efficient lighting, where sometimes you don't need to replace these light bulbs for 10 years. So when you think about these balusters that always, the long tube ones that don't work very well and they flicker and cause you to have, it's probably all through your places that you're doing your work. Horrible for you, horrible for your psyche, horrible for your mental health. We know that. These LED efficient ones can be good. They can actually, some of them can give you vitamin D. And when you think about the factories and how much waste that you're not producing by having these light bulbs that don't need to be made for 10 years, that's why they're expensive. Because the company says, I just made a product that no one needs to replace in a long time. So it kind of doesn't help the company. And a lot of companies do exactly that. They make products to break so they can get you to buy more. And you don't need to look far to your vehicles, to the clothing you wear, to the equipment that you buy now. If you bought a toaster 20 years ago, it's still working. If you bought a toaster today, you'll have 2 years, then it'll break. That's just the way that things are made now. Greed. So I can replace it and make more money. Again, gives you a little bit more idea. They use a lot of green spaces wherever possible. It's quite a beautiful place. Another one, green restaurant design. So LEED is one of the first restaurants in Canada to receive the energy or leadership in energy and environmental design. And it kind of blows my mind. But if you actually look at the menu on Tim Hortons, a lot of the items in which they cook, they haven't expanded their menu items to compete with what you would call maybe another fast food restaurant. Everything that they cook is kind of using different kinds of equipment. Now, there's lots of stuff that they've done. This is one of the many chains that they do, and here's a few of the things that they offer. So they do a crushed granular fill for the parking lot. It's made from 99% recycled material. The white roof is to reduce heat island effect, keeps the interior cooler, again, saves on energy. LED lighting throughout. Locally manufactured millwork using forest stewardship. So trees, plants, everything that they can use, they will use. They use local drought-resistant plant species for the exterior landscape. So drought resistance means that they need a limited amount of water. And then the major issues still remain is the Tim Hortons cup. So the problem with the cup, it's not recyclable, which blows my mind. It's crazy. But if you were ever to go into, I'm at the college a lot, I'm walking around, and while we don't have a lot of Tim Hortons cups, we have those polyurethane plastic white cups that I drink probably 10 out of. I drink 6-7 coffees a day out of a cup, and I probably get a new cup every time I get a coffee or often. And then they're not recyclable. They go in the garbage. They go in the landfill. Take a while to break down because they're plastic coated. It's an issue. So when we think about facility design with green food service, there's a couple things that we want to think about. We want to reduce and eliminate the negative impact the building has on the local ecosystems. So, your waste is number one. Your recyclables, your garbage, your oil. So changing out your oil, filtering your oil, if you can't help but use oil, but if you can reduce it and use less of it, then ultimately that's better. And now we have new equipment like an air fryer, which will kind of produce a similar effect to many of these dishes. So you can get industry size air fryers and different styles of air frying equipment that can mimic what a deep fryer does, healthier for the client or the customer or the patient, also better for the environment. You want a sustainable site plan. You want to safeguard your water supplies and ensure water use efficiencies. So this could be low flow toilets and taps. Most taps now you'll see that you have to run your hand underneath them and then you'll get a little bit of water. So what is the amount? 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I know we have to wash our hands for several minutes in some situations to ensure that it's clean. So what do you do then? They don't need to be underwater the entirety of the time. Often you're just rubbing and cleaning the area. Determining optimal facility and equipment energy efficiency. So this is looking at exactly all of your systems, looking at what kind of energy is required and how do you make this a little bit more streamlined. It also has to do with when we turn on. When we turn on our equipment. So often what happens in kitchens, first thing they do, the person that opens comes in, turns on every single piece of equipment at 9 a.m. and they're all hot and running, ready to go, but you don't even start cooking until 11 or 11:30. So even just the timing, that 2 hours, those things are running and wasting energy because they're not producing anything. So these are some of the goals that we look at in green food service. Energy conservation. So we have a ventilation system, and every place must have a ventilation system by law. Air control is the single biggest user of energy. So keeping hot air out of our air-conditioned areas or more insulation in cooking equipment to keep hot or cold air in. So this is one of the big things that we need to work on. Using daylight where possible instead of lighting. Using equipment at full capacity. So I've shown you a couple images of some dishwashers. The dishwashers that are the rotisserie style or the revolving style, I call them the dolphin, but where they put them in one at a time and they go through a loop. Those are horrible for water and energy use because they're constantly always on. The ones where you fill up completely, drop down, and you can do are much better. Using a dishwasher is much, much better than washing a dish by hand as well. Even a half full dishwasher at your home is better than washing dishes in your sink. Just so you know, it uses a limited amount of water. Turn on the equipment as needed, and then practice preventative maintenance. So fridges and freezers and ranges and even your ventilation systems and all your hoods and your vents and they need to be cleaned out so they're running optimally. When these run optimally, they don't waste energy. Especially anything that has a flame out of it, when it runs hard or it's starting to get carbon coated and all the grit and grime and grease and stuff, it'll have to run hotter or you're going to have to turn it up hotter to get the same BTUs that you could get earlier on a clean one. Also the fact that when you have maintenance on this equipment, you don't need to replace them as often, again, saving energy. Water conservation is tough. Low flow toilets and faucets work, recycling gray water. So this is a lot of the water that you could use already, and using this to water some of your landscapes is fantastic. Don't automatically serve water to guests when requests, only do it when requested. The spray nozzles for dishwashers are not fantastic, but you kind of need them, but avoiding the running carousel version dishwashers help, and really creating some employee awareness of what you're going to do. So the United Nations actually has a set of 38 goals. United Nation goals. Sorry to get up. there's goals, and then there's the good life goals. So they have 17 goals and they have 38 good life goals, and that's how you apply these to a workplace. But basically saying they have these 17 goals. And within these goals, they're getting every country to sign on in the United Nations. Georgian College, Canada has signed on, as well as Georgian College. And it's a lot. So it has to do with both social, so no poverty, zero hunger, good wealth and well-being, quality education, gender equity. This is all that social sustainability, right? What's good for people? Clean water, affordable and clean energy. This is the kind of sustainable climate, responsible consumption. This is the environmental. And then we also have the economical, decent work and economic growth, reduced inequalities, peace and justice, partnerships, life on land, life below the water. There's 17 goals in which that they want these to work. And every country has to sign up and say, we're on these and these are what we're going to try to achieve. Now, a really neat thing, the good life goals, and if you, at Georgian College, we don't even have a sustainability strategy, let's call it. We do the gardens out there, that when we donate a lot of the food. I do the maple syrup function there at Georgian College, and I do it here at home. So we make our own maple syrup and we donate it to the indigenous tribes and to some people and use it in our culinary labs. I think in retirement homes and long-term, retirement homes more so, but long-term care too, have a huge, huge, huge understated opportunity to be growing some of their own stuff, specifically when you think about your clients or your residents being able to be outside, hands in the dirt, working within whatever reasonable amount they can, helping produce some of their own food. They would absolutely love it. It'd be good for their mental health. It'd be good for their physical health. And it would be good for your bottom line, which is perfect. So the good life goals, just so you know, are how you relay all of these wonderful I don't know if you guys can hear that. Hold on, I gotta stop that. The good life goals is how you actually make the United Nations goals work within smaller areas. So these are all the same ones, but this is, then you can click on one and you can go and talk about them, and it'll actually tell you, okay, well, how do you make this work inside your workplace, right? It's more about applying this to the random person that works there, the average person that works there, and how they can impact it. So United Nations, 17 sustainable goals, and the good life goals, both of those are great resources for you as future employees and future managers. This is something that you could really come to, especially when you're doing an interview. Down the road, be like, I'd like to get into management. I'd like to also introduce a sustainability strategy incorporating the United Nations 17 good life goals. I think it would be good for our bottom line, as well as for our residents and for marketing really as well. You can't do enough of this stuff, and it's sexy and it's hot right now as far as it's trending, and people like this. Another one is solid waste management. So there's an urgent need to reduce the amount of municipal solid waste. We do a horrible job at our recycling plants. Most of the time we used to send all of our recycling to India, and they no longer will take it. So we're trying to do something ourselves, but we're not very good. So having your own containers and packaging that are easily recyclable, like how do you use your food scraps and your miscellaneous inorganic waste? Maybe having your own composting system there, because you have outdoor areas, you have gardens, you have those units. All of this stuff is fantastic. The problem is that it stops when someone says, whose job is it then? Well, then we need to hire a sustainable person, or we need to hire a gardener, or we need to hire an outdoors person to do a lot of this stuff. And this is where all these good ideas always stop. It happens at the college a million times. I come up with these amazing ideas in ways that we can save money, in ways that we can produce great meals or groceries or maple syrup and honey, and we should have fruit trees and our own grocery store on campus, and all these are all the things that we should be doing. But then as soon as they say, okay, well, who's running it? We got to hire new people. And then it gets bogged down in this management stuff. And that's why people like yourselves are the ones who will come up with ideas on how to manage these. We also need to work on source reduction. So this is phasing out the single-use container and double packaging. We're making great steps, great strides to reducing the toxic content or the use of all of these things, and then the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, take out single-use containers, single-use plastic cutlery. This stuff went through the roof. We're worse off now than we probably have ever been, because everyone is no more worried about the cross-contamination of what seems to be a cold-style illness. Although I know it's can be very, very detrimental, and I had it, and it really kicked my ass. But what is the consequence of the fear that we have around this particular pandemic, this disease, virus, and the future ones? Because they're just going to keep coming. So we have to really work at the source reduction of using all of this stuff. That's not good for our environment. So the war for the worst packaging goes to small electronics. So small electronics are very bad, such as this little USB key, which is very tiny. It's sold in this huge package, so it actually costs them more for the package than it does for the USB. So that's what you're paying for. The plastic water bottle is probably one of the worst. There's some people using water bottles to do like create houses and stuff. There's some ways in which that we can do it. They are recyclable, but they just don't get to the recycling plant like they should. So the obvious alternative can be just a reusable water bottle. We're better with that. A lot of people are using them, but still 60 million plastic water bottles are consumed every single day. 14% end up recycled. The rest, over 18 billion every year, are sent to landfills. 18 billion. And the water companies are not out for the good of the world. You think a water company, they're like, yeah, we want to save the world. It's our water we're selling. They want you to buy these water bottles and use them as many times and then throw them out. Buy another one, throw them out. Even to the point where they've come up with reports saying you can't refill a water bottle because it's cancer causing. I'm like, well, if it's cancer, sorry, I'm not going to get off track, but if it's cancer causing, then you shouldn't be selling it at all. It's not cancer causing. You just want new water bottles being sold and made. That's how you make your money. These little 100 calorie pack snacks, so everything's getting smaller and tighter. So now they're saying, oh, it's healthy. There you go. We as a North American population apparently have control issues and portion control issues that we can't buy a full pack, eat some, and then put it away. So that's what we should be doing, but obviously we're not. These little styrofoam bits, God, I hate these. The polyurethane foam, it's deposited in landfills all across the United States and in Canada. It's also known as styrofoam. It's the worst packaging offender. It's made of a non-renewable petroleum, and it is not biodegradable. So if you see these in a package of stuff that you order, don't order from them anymore. It's not worth it. I'm sure there's an alternative way of getting that. 3,570,000 tons of plastic food, sacks, and wraps were deposited in the landfills. In Canada, up to 15 billion plastic bags are used every year. We are slowly starting to cycle in different straws and cutlery, so wood cutlery and paper straws and others. They're still single use, but they're not single use in the way. You know what's funny? This is, I think this was created mid-pandemic or in the beginning, and you can see that single-use plastic items will be banned in Canada by the end of 2021. Yeah, it's the end of 2021. They're not banned yet. Next to source reduction, recycling is pretty critical. We want to conserve scarce natural resources, reduce the quantity of wasted material in landfills, reduce energy costs, reduce waste in oceans and groundwater contamination. It is difficult to do. In a workplace, some of the best practices are create ownership on it. So get a recycling coordinator, pay them a little bit more. You get $1 more an hour, but you're a recycling coordinator. Have a recycling committee. Again, if you have reduction in waste, recycling systems, you will save money as a business. Pay that money to somebody else and make it work. Get staff on board, offer incentives, have awards, find ways to reduce waste. Align yourself with a nonprofit organization who can also perhaps train or provide some resources. Second Harvest is being one of those. So this is one of the Canada's largest food rescue charity. So they want to help prevent the environment, but they also want to stop hunger. So they've done a lot of stuff. I won't go too far into this, but it gives you an idea of what you can do and an idea of a non-for-profit company that you can align with. Composting is good too. Composting is growing in popularity. Everyone in Canada, for the most part, gets free recycling, garbage, and composting bins in their home. The compost, they go to help promote and provide habitable land. So they conserve resources, they reduce pollution and landfill costs. And if you want to compost on your own, not send it out, you can produce your own healthy soil for your lawns and gardens that can then produce more food. A 500-bed New York hospital started a solid waste program. And over 4 years, this is what they resulted in. They saved $1 million. Discovered that for every patient tray prepped, there was 15 pounds of waste on that patient tray. Every staff member given reusable mugs. Those who didn't use them were charged 15 cents per drink, and that went to charity. And their composting project diverted 166,000 pounds of waste from landfills. This is over a 4-year period at a 500-bed New York hospital. Big, but not big. And it's crazy what they were able to do. Restaurant trends are tough. It's not new. It's something eco-friendly, sustainability. You'll see in a lot of restaurants, they'll have a 100-kilometer diet where all the food in your plate's made from a 100-kilometer diet. A lot of restaurants are starting their own herb gardens and some of their actual full-blown gardens, which is also difficult because many of the restaurants that that are populated are in urban centers where there's not the availability of open land. Some can use different kinds of geothermal. This is an organic restaurant, an eco-friendly organic restaurant in the Milan Green Hotel where they brought the gardens inside. This one here is called the Rustic Grenville House. It's powered completely by geothermal and solar power. They use the rainwater and the waste filtered to water all of their plants. And it has attained a near zero carbon footprint. It's almost impossible. And that's the thing. We don't need to rule out all carbon creating events. That's an impossibility. But we reduce where we can and we remove it as much as we can. And it's baby steps. And maybe one day there will be a technology that can provide us with those alternatives. Even the way in the construction is important, as in the Vantage Shanghai restaurant, where almost every single plant that was removed was either used in the building of this particular place or was transplanted somewhere else. And a couple other things about local. So local is as a sustainable of an effort for its sustainability, period. Economically, environmentally, and socially. It is the number one way that we can become sustainable. So people would like to buy local. They kind of are willing to pay more for local because it's fresh and they want to celebrate their local community. They often want unique and something original, and they want to support local artists, chefs, farms, and family. We make local maple syrup. I have people offering to buy it all the time, and I don't sell it because it's not about that. I just keep it and I give it to my friends and family. But if I wanted to make a business out of it, I could, and I could probably sell it for a decent amount of money. So again, when you say why buy local, when you spend $100 at a non-local business, $43 of that stays in your community, less than 50%. 57% leaves the local community, whereas when you spend $100 at a local business, almost 70% stays in your community. And when more money stays in your community, it has this multiplier effect. So more money stays in your community. That means more money goes to local shop owners and business owners. Local business owners are able to have more business. They hire more people. More people are hired, they get better wages. These people have families, they create more business, and they create more customers for these local businesses. And you see this just has this multiplier ripple effect, which is fantastic. Support small. We don't need the Apples of the world making any more money than they already do. They already have more money than they know what to do with, and they're not doing anything good for the world. Again, more information on eating local. I can't stress it enough. Buying local, eating local, supporting local. It's good for the environment. It's good for the economy. It's great for your health, mental and physical. Just do it. And finally, we'll wrap up this class with some of the costing of design for food and beverage establishments. And then we'll go into the bonus assignment, which I might do in its own video. So I apologize if you're kind of watching this waiting. So costing for design for food and beverage establishments can vary widely based on a lot of things. So if you're starting from scratch, or you're opening up on a brand new location or an already existing one, and also like what city are you going to be building in? The land has a huge cost to it, as you probably all know. And that also applies directly to rents as well. So will you be living in Manhattan or Barrie would have a big impact. In 2019, the Building Journal estimated that a national average restaurant with mid-level finishes run about $160 a square foot. Think about that when we're designing our GDR assignment, where I say it's 50 by 80 feet. So 50 by 80 feet, what is that? 4,000 square feet. So that's something that you can take into, so 4,000 square feet on an average of $160 a square foot. That could tell you what it would cost for you to build a restaurant. This includes your build out, your permits, your major equipment, and your design. If this was in New York City, it'd be $216. And then usually a designer would charge anywhere from $25,000 to $500,000, depending on the scope of the project. This will give you an idea if you had to renovate some of your basic areas. So if you're changing out flooring, well, anywhere from $5 to $7 per square foot, and this is with people doing it. So this is also the purchase of the equipment as well as the installation. Painting is usually $2.50 to $3 per square foot. Carpet anywhere from $6 to $10, depending on the quality, and also it includes the install, but not maybe some of the other stuff. And then drywall, again, varies. So it all depends on what you're looking at doing. When you're thinking about installation and plumbing, or insulation. So for insulation, it's around $1 per square foot. You might want to soundproof your ceiling. $50 to $85 on average for a plumber, and that's probably low. Just changing the layout of a plumbing can cost an average of $1,000. Like moving a single sink. I'm going to move this sink that's right here. I need one over on this wall because there's a lot of cross-contamination possibility. Might run you $1,000. So, and then we talk about disability, accessibility costs. So this is fairly big. So, a full bathroom remodel, so not necessarily getting rid of what's in the bathroom already, although you may need a new toilet or a different sink, will probably run you around $9,000. If you're looking at some grab bars, $85 to $400 each. A ramp, 30-foot ramp costs you over $3,000, $5,000 for an automatic door. Elevator is at least $30,000. This is where all these costs really start coming in. And then, of course, you'll have all of your permits. So these aren't all of the permits that you may require. Could be a building, a business license, a liquor license, land use, you name it, accessibility compliance. It's not really a permit, rather it's more so you have to have a bare minimum of this. In our industry, we are beyond bare minimum. We're almost like a 50% level, where 50% of our tables, washrooms, and everything else should be, maybe 100 really when you think about it, but 50% should have some accessibility compliant options. So that is in a nutshell what we talk about when it comes to sustainable design. Next week, what I will be doing is giving you a bunch of review slides. So it's essentially everything that could be on the test. I will post that up early so you can review that and use that as test material for next week's test, which is 15%, and it's online. It's not a ton of material, and I feel like you'll do very well on it. So that's it for now. Please check out the assignments tab, where I will put up the bonus assignment that you can complete this week. Cheers.